up guys, and welcome back to the channel. You already know who it is. It's Ronton from Wrench-a-holics, and today we are back in the lab. I apologize for the lack of updates and posts and also videos on the YouTube, only because it's been way too hot to be working in the garage. I don't have a fan in here, so I don't have circulating air, so it just gets really hot and muggy in here. So today it's a late start. I was too lazy to even come out today, but decided to go ahead and make a video. We're going to be working on the 240 again. Again, as you can see, I'm already sweating. It is hot in here, and it's like 7 o'clock at night. So, we are back. I'm going to be doing just, the little thing on the 240, nothing too big, nothing too small. Well, probably I would say small. It's wiring work. Again, if you guys hate wiring, hopefully I don't bore you guys, or if you guys want to learn how to do wiring, I hope you guys watch this video and learn something. Wiring is really a daunting task. A lot of people don't like to do it. I love wiring, as long as you know the concept of how things should work and how the path of positive energy from the battery goes and all that ground stuff. As long as you know how that works, wiring is going to be real easy. So today we're going to be, I guess, completing my gauge cluster. As you guys can see from previous videos and also on Instagram, there is one more gauge spot that is blank, and it's a really crucial gauge. I mean, a lot of people care less for it, but I do plan on driving my car more, so this gauge is really crucial. Basically, it's a fuel gauge. So I went ahead and just bought one, and I really like this one because it's adjustable. A lot of fuel gauges don't come adjustable. They are just preset to a certain ohm, which is resistance. But this one has a wide range, and also you can adjust it. So we're gonna go ahead and install that today. Enough talking, let's get to it. Alright guys, so there's a gauge out the box. As you can see, it has the symbol for full, and then also empty, as well as your fuel. And also it has this strip right here, so I believe that's 10 LEDs. You'll have 8 blue, 1 yellow, and 1 red, signifying the amount of gas you have in the tank. So pretty simple, but yet effective for those who don't have one. It does rely on your float, so if your float is messed up, this gauge will not work. That's just a little notice that you guys should know. Most of these are universal, so basically it works in conjunction with the OEM float. Some are, I guess you can get a whole kit that can work with it, where it comes with a float, but I'm not going to deal with that. My float works, so we're just going to use the gauge. But on the back, as you can see here, so you got your wiring, black, green, and yellow. And then you have this right here, this little knob deal. So this knob deal right here, this is the actual adjuster. Pretty much it adjusts the resistance, and that tells you how much gas you have in the tank. So I went ahead and went to the gas station and I filled up the tank, basically to the point where automatic stop occurred. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and put that as full, since I don't want to max out and then have gas spewing all over the place. So pretty much I just filled it up until it hit the automatic stop, and I'm gonna go ahead and consider that a full tank. From there, we're gonna go ahead and go in the car, take everything apart. Daunting task again, but we're gonna take everything apart in order to install this guy, go through the wiring, and hopefully make everything work. So let's get to it. Alright guys, so here we are in the trunk, because my battery is located here. If you guys haven't watched that video on how to relocate your battery, I went ahead and did one. So go ahead and watch it, it's pretty good. But anyways, back in the trunk, because my battery's here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just see if this thing lights up. Again, this is not like one of them fancy gauges, it's just a gauge, and I'm hoping this thing works. I'm taking a gamble here guys. But anyways, go through the instructions, and ironically the black wire is the positive wire and the green wire is the negative. So black positive, green negative. Ironically that's kind of backwards, but anyways, so we're gonna go ahead and just see if this thing actually lights up. So let me just set this up real quick, and hopefully we can get this thing to work. I mean, that's my hope. Alright, so here we go. Perfect. Alright, cool. So, as I suspected, like with any gauge, as soon as you completely ground out the gauge, you'll go either you'll go to empty. So pretty much the gauge is operating correctly just by doing that. As you can see, there's a slight, it was really quick, but basically the gauge went from full all the way down to 0, and the only thing was that's because we didn't have a signal to the gauge. So lights up and everything, all the LEDs work, so that's a good sign. So we're gonna go ahead and proceed to take the gauge cluster off once again, and I'm hoping this will be the last time I do it because it's a pain to get to the cluster. I mean, there's just a lot of things that have to come off, so I really hate doing that part. It's really time consuming. I think that takes most of the time than me actually connecting the wires. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that real quick, knock that out, get everything out, and then we're gonna go through the schematics of the OEM wiring harness through the FSM. We're gonna find the fuel signal from the sub harness, and then that's where we're gonna tap the yellow wire to, and then we already have a power to ground. We'll just inline it with all the power and the grounds that run all the gauges already. So that's the simple part, and then from there we're gonna go ahead and start messing with the resistance regulator. So we're gonna go ahead and take that apart, and yeah, let's get to it. Alright guys, so that is the custom cluster that I made a few years back. As you can see, so pretty much I'll just give you guys a rundown if you haven't seen the video. So the first one's a turbo timer, second one's a PBM EVDM, that one next to it is my wideband. The big center one right here is my TAC, which I recently got working, and that one right there is the boost gauge, and that empty spot right there will now be the fuel gauge. So I've been running like this with this setup for about a year or two, and that wasn't working, but it was all hooked up. And obviously I've been staring at this big empty hole right here, which sucks, but we're gonna go ahead and fix that today. And that one right there, this one was just having to do a bunch of research on the forums to figure out why the tachometer wasn't picking up the signal, but I finally got it, and it actually is accurate because that shows my RPMs in a digital form. So if you hold it steady, you can pretty much I would say assume that it is correct. I say assume because, again, who knows, but it's coming from the ECU, so it'll read the ECU as well. So the Power FC reads that signal and it shows up on the commander, and I pretty much held it at a steady, you know, RPM without having it fluctuate. And the TAC analog versus the digital corresponds with each other, so they're pretty much on point. So I'm just happy that that thing works now, because the main thing why I wanted to do this whole cluster thing was because the tachometer on my OEM cluster crapped out and I didn't want to deal with it. And also I have another issue, which was the speedometer. The speedometer wasn't picking up a signal. I'm assuming the VSS, or the vehicle speed sensor on the transmission, is broken, but I don't want to deal with it because I've been trying to find one and it's kind of hard to find one. So I went ahead and bought a GPS one. I tested that one out in my daily driving to work. It's pretty accurate, you know. I mean, honestly, if you go with the flow of traffic, you should be okay as far as driving speeds. So I'm not really worried about it being super accurate. But anyways, today's mission is filling up that guy right there with the fuel gauge and having it work finally, so that this whole thing is completed. Yeah, so the worst part everything's got to come off. If you guys been working on your 240 and you guys access the gauge cluster, you already know that it's not as simple as just taking the cluster out. I mean, this whole thing's got to come off. The steering column's got to drop down and all this other crap. So it just sucks. But yeah, let's just get to it because I want to get it done and it's getting dark. Alright, just a quick little update. Went ahead and already took off the steering column trim, upper lower. I went ahead and took off the switches here, so the hazards, the defroster, and the headlight retract have a dummy switch. And then I went ahead and removed the lower panel here. And now the first two bolts for the steering column have been removed, and then the two nuts on the bottom, I'm just gonna go ahead and put them at the lowest but not completely take it off so that it can support the steering column. And then once that is off, pretty much you'll be able to remove the gauge cluster trim and proceed to removing the gauge cluster, whether it's a OEM one or the custom one. If you guys followed my video, which I made, that'll be the last piece before you can get to it. So that's a quick little update of making our way, making our progress. Starting to cool down a little bit, so I'm working a little bit faster now. So I'm just gonna go ahead and just continue what I'm doing until we actually get the cluster out. And then once the cluster is out, we're gonna go ahead and go through the gauge cluster sub harness, find the signal wire, and go from there. So again, there it is, guys. Halfway, I would say. Hardest part would be connecting wires and all that, but this is just more time consuming, I should say. But nonetheless, we're getting there. So let's keep going. Alright guys, so we are one step closer. As you can see now, the steering column is dropped. The gauge cluster trim is now removed. So now all we gotta do now is remove the actual gauge cluster. As you can see, the reason why I hate this, there you have it. There's just so much stuff involved in order to even get to where you gotta go. So it's kind of a daunting task, but it'll be all worth it once I finally get that thing filled and operational. So again, we're close, but we are not done yet. Slowly making our way to the gauge cluster. So quick update, there you guys have it. Let's just keep moving. Alright guys, and there we have it. The gauge cluster is now out. We're going to go ahead and prep out the cluster to be placed inside its holder and make sure everything's cool. And one step closer yet again to the final product. So now what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go through the subcluster harness, which is here, and figure out which one of these wires is the fuel signal, so we can connect the yellow gauge or the yellow wire so that this thing is operational. Gonna go have to bust out the FSM, but that should be easy. So we are almost there, guys. Time to bust out the soldering iron, the heat shrink, and test the tape to make this whole thing a lot cleaner, as it's kind of a mess right now. And we're almost there. Alright, so we have the fuel gauge all mounted up, and then I had to delume this and go through the wiring harness on my phone, which I saved a picture right here. Pretty much this was an NX 1600 to S13 cluster swap. So I went ahead and went through that and found the corresponding wires. So this is my ground wire, this is my fuel gauge signal wire, and now I just have to find the positive switch wire, which I believe I did it once before. I think I saw a ignition switch. Yeah, here it is. So I did it before, so I'm gonna have to do is just take that wire out, only because this gauge doesn't come with like a sub harness clip, so it actually is all wired in the back and it has to stay there. So unfortunately it's not like, you know, the Primo gauges that have their own sub harnesses, this one just plugs right into the back of the actual gauge, so that kind of sucks. So that I have to incorporate that to the actual sub cluster harness instead of having my own positive and ground wire harness for all the gauges, which I do for these three. So unfortunately, this one's gonna have to be tied into the OEM sub cluster harness, which I don't mind. I mean, at least when I take everything out, it'll have to all come out in one shot. I can't just leave the gauge cluster having its own dedicated harness, because I'd have to I'd have to remove the cluster, and if I remove the cluster, I have to unhook these, and that's just too much time, too much effort. So I'm going to incorporate it into the sub cluster harness, so that when I have to take it off, all I got to do is to remove these two plugs right here, and then this whole cluster should come out with ease. So right now we're going to go ahead and just connect the green, and it has a blue tracer wire and the ground wire, to the corresponding wires on the cluster, or on the gauge, which is ironically again black is positive, green is negative, and yellow is signal. So these are accounted for, but the black one, or the positive, is unaccounted for, since I still have to find the positive wire on the subcluster harness, which is a switch, because I don't want to have this thing on the whole time, or else it'll drain the battery. So there you guys have it. Slowly but surely we're making our way. Getting pretty late, so I might have to do this tomorrow. I'm getting tired, but hopefully I can get it all hooked up tonight, because I do want to see this gauge work. And I also have to mess with the this guy here, the adjuster, so gotta make sure that thing works correctly. Alright guys, it is now day 2. As you can see, sun ran out of time yesterday, got too dark, and got too tired to finish. But today I have one more thing to do before I wrap up putting the cluster back into the car and showing you guys the operational fuel gauge, is I have to add another power wire to the actual sub cluster harness, only because I have one more thing I need to add in order for me to make everything work on the car as far as what I want to do. And I don't want to take everything apart just to add that on. So since it's already apart, I'm going to go ahead and just add that on in line with the subcluster harness, and I should be good to go. And then from there, we're just going to put everything back together, and I'm going to try to figure out how to adjust the fuel gauge using the resistance adjuster, only because I think right now it's not set, or from the box it won't be set correctly. So again, we're just basing it off of full tank. I filled it up yesterday night up until the auto stop on the pump, and I'm just going to consider that a full tank. And we're going to go ahead and go through the steps on how to adjust it, I think, from the instructions I've been reading online. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and then hopefully everything is good to go once everything is done. So enough talking, let's get back to it. Alright guys, so there you guys have it. Right now it's all mounted up. I'm just trying to make sure all the wires are tucked right behind this gauge panel, make sure everything is cool and nothing's getting caught up or binding or anything like that. And in the next clip, pretty much we're gonna go ahead and see if the gauge lights up, and then also trying to go through the directions on how to adjust the resistance on that fuel gauge. Hoping I did all the wiring correctly. If not a big deal. At least everything right now is off, so I can still take off that panel with ease. So again, I'm not going to go ahead and wrap it up just in case, only because I want to make sure that that thing's working. And also that's not it. Here we go. So I went ahead and spliced in this USB connector. So pretty much it's a permanent power source. So instead of using the cigarette lighter USB charger style, I went ahead and bought the converter from 5 to 12. Pretty much hardline or hardwired it to a positive and negative. Well, pretty much it's on a switch, so that whatever this thing runs on, it'll work only when the key is on.
So that's another project we got coming up. We're just gonna wait on some things to happen first before we go ahead and do that. But right now everything is okay, everything's cool. We're just gonna make sure that works. Pretty good. I like it now, it's all complete. There's no like gaping hole here missing with, you know, missing a gauge. So it's pretty cool. I like it. Alright guys, so here it is. Everything's hooked up, and we're gonna go ahead and turn on the car to the on position, so pretty much the accessories, and hopefully everything should light up. That's my plan. So let's check it out. Cool. So you have it, all the gauges functional. Oh yeah, I forgot I had that. Alright guys, here we go. My wideband, so that's the reason why it's not working. I actually have to redo my downpipe, so I unhooked it for now, and yeah, so that's it. Finally it works. Oh my gosh, stressing out. Alright guys, so here it is. I hope you guys can hear me. My car is actually just idling right now. Everything's functional, from my like battery gauge, or voltmeter I should say. Temp gauge, it reads in Celsius and Fahrenheit. Got my boost gauge. Right now it's showing 14.8. It's actually not working right now. I disconnected it because I have to redo my downpipe. So I just disconnected the harness. The tack, again, finally works. I don't know what the hell I did with that one, but it took me a while to figure it out. Boost gauge, pretty good. And fuel gauge, we're at full. So everything is working. Happy with it. Took a while to put this thing together. Countless hours looking at wiring diagram and all that. But if you guys know how to read a wiring diagram, wiring is easy. But yeah, so everything works. As you can see, there's the tack reading, and off my commander, pretty much on. I would say a little bit off. We're as close as we want it to be, so pretty good. Alright guys, there you guys have it. That is the fuel gauge install on a 240. Pretty much, I think the only thing that I made a mistake on was pulling the signal from the subcluster harness. Apparently that didn't work, so you have to pull the signal from your fuel pump. There's a signal wire coming out of the trunk that you literally have to run a whole wire through. Again, that's not a big issue to me. Primarily the main thing for putting this gauge on the 240 was having a functional fuel gauge so that I know how much gas I have in the tank. Only because I've been driving this car for about 2 years since I've done the cluster swap, and I've had no way of checking the gas. I pretty much just have to top it off every single time I drive, if I've gone, you know, a lot of days in between fill-ups. So that's kind of a, you know, it's not efficient to me. I hate having to go, oh, I gotta go get gas, or I don't even know how much gas I have or whatnot. So having this gauge is just purely based on function, nothing else. Only because, like I said, you know, I just want to know how much gas I have. But yeah, so there you guys have it. That is the install. If you guys watched the entire video, thank you guys so much. If you're brand new to the channel, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment down below. I do read them, and I also do respond to them. And as always, for all my day ones out there, you already know what time it is. Hype is for the moment, and style is forever. Deuces.